Notoriously Last. Authenticating any famous last words of a known time traveler is notoriously difficult and is not without dire fraught. The matter of finality has always carried with it a peculiar burden. To be last is to carry the weight of an ending, and to utter famous last words is to attempt to pin meaning to the collapsing edge of time. The fragment before us, strange, wry, and profound, complicates that ambition by throwing a wrench in the very notion of sequence. The speaker is a time traveler. Let us begin, then, with the immediate absurdity. What does it mean to authenticate the last words of someone who has the power to loop, return, or preempt the moment of their death? A time traveler, by definition, destabilizes the arrow of time, and thus the integrity of any moment, especially a final one, is always suspect. Today's ending may have already been overwritten tomorrow. The death you witnessed last week may be undone by a conversation that will happen next Tuesday. And so the phrase famous last words collapses under the weight of contradiction, not because words are false, but because sequence is unstable. And if sequence is unstable, then so too is meaning. For meaning, as we have come to depend on it, is often a function of sequence, what came before, what came after, how it all added up. Meaning has been defined, in part, by endings. Tragedy is tragedy because it ends in ruin. Comedy because it ends in reunion. We think we know what something means once we have seen its final form. But what if there is no final form? What if the one speaking can leap beyond our frame of comprehension and return to revise their words, clarify a nuance, hide a dagger in the laugh line of a joke they told a decade ago? This is what makes the authentication of such words notoriously difficult. For what are we authenticating, really? The moment? The speaker? The intent? The outcome? Are we even sure the speaker is still the speaker by the time they speak? In the world of time travel, identity itself becomes a warped medium, smeared across decades like wet paint dragged by a child's hand across the walls of history. And yet, despite all this, there's still the desire to authenticate. That is the human thing. That longing to know the last thing that was said. To fix a closing phrase to a life. To locate a kind of truth in the final moment, as if the curtain call were the truest self made bare. We want to know what Caesar said before the blade. What Joan whispered in the fire, what the astronaut sighed before radio contact broke. But if the speaker is a known time traveler, then we know too much, and also not enough. We know, for example, that the speaker may have whispered their final thought to multiple witnesses at different times, with slightly different emphasis, in slightly different worlds. We know that the death we saw may not have been the last time they lived. And we know, tragically, that even if we possess the recording, the transcript, or the breathless testimony of the dying words themselves, we are left with doubt. Is this the version that counts? This, perhaps, is the dire fraught. The phrase is not without humor. Dire fraught is not merely danger, but a kind of peril laced with pathos. Is the storm that arrives not only with lightning, but with irony. The time traveler may be laughing as they die, again, while we scramble to scribble down their supposed last utterance. Perhaps they are already behind us, reading over our shoulder, correcting the punctuation of their own demise. Let us consider, then, what is truly at stake. If authentication is impossible, then we are left with stories. Not proofs, not certainties, but narratives, memories, the soft, decaying records of what was heard or seen or believed. We are returned to the realm of myth. And so the time traveler joins the pantheon of mythic figures, Christ on the cross, Socrates with the cup, Buddha beneath the tree. Each said something. Each moment is recorded. Each has been interpreted, doubted, canonized, weaponized, and reinterpreted again. But were they time travelers? Perhaps not in the literal sense. But they were each in their way, agents who altered the direction of history by speaking at the edge of death. Their last words echo across generations like riddles with no key. If we are honest, though, there's a time traveler in each of us. Memory is a kind of time travel. So is regret. So is longing. We jump backward to relive moments, forward to imagine outcomes, and in both directions we bend our present into something it might not otherwise be. The danger, the dire fraught, is that we might begin to treat our own most important moments as if they were stable, fixed, when in truth they are vulnerable to all the distortions of time, perception, and revision. A famous last word, once spoken, becomes a ghost. It is not the speaker, but it is not the speaker either. It is a haunting, a footprint of identity, left behind in a moment that refuses to stay still. And if the speaker has access to the machine of time, the haunting is amplified. A phrase may echo before it is spoken, or linger long after the speaker has departed from all known time. This is not metaphor. This is the reality of temporal rupture. And so we return to the fragment and see it now more clearly as a cautionary inscription. Do not be too sure of what you hear. Do not be too quick to claim what was really meant. The time traveler resists your narrative. And the harder you try to pin down their truth, the more you risk becoming tangled in their web of alternative timelines. From a zero-friction machine company perspective, this fragment is itself a tool, a kind of calibration device for narrative humility. It trains the reader to approach all final words with suspicion, not cynicism, but disciplined humility. It reconditions the urge to quote, to canonize, to fix the meaning of an ending, and replaces it with a deeper understanding that endings, especially those uttered by travelers of time, may be provisional, repeatable, and infected with paradox. And this, too, is good knowledge to have. For in a world increasingly obsessed with recording, tracking, preserving, and authenticating every word, every thought, every departure, the truly wise will recognize that not all last words can be verified, and that some of the most important utterances may be forever lost in the folds of time's cloak. So if someone tells you what the time traveler said before they vanished, before they died, before they flipped the switch that rewrote the year, listen closely. Write it down if you must, but hold it loosely, for that which is notoriously last may also be repeated, and that which is authenticated may have been spoken as a joke, a test, or a warning to those who seek too desperately to make certainty from the chaos of time. Because in the end, even the final word may not be final, especially if the speaker knew how to vanish.